Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. We're doing our Saturday new music, Saturday music artist. I haven't come up with a good enough name for it yet. I'm going to figure something out. I keep changing the name up on it, like Saturday artist, Saturday new music. Either way, it open mic Saturday at the Above the Bar podcast. There is the answer. I have made it happen.
There it is.
Problem is, I will forget it in about 10 minutes and it won't mean shit anyway. So that's how things work in my brain. So, but we're bellying up to the bar tonight. We have, we all hear this. I want to be an artist. People want to write books. They want to get into movies. They want to get into theater. They think they can sing because the acoustics is good in their bathroom. All these different things. So we had an opportunity to have a gentleman on who is involved in this. He's been an artist himself. He knows how to make music happen, but he knows how to get an album out, what it takes to get an album out, what it means to also probably in my opinion, the hardest thing to do is tell someone that maybe you got to go back and work on this a little bit more before we go, because nobody ever wants to be told you're right there, but you're not there, So he's got that kind of background. He has his own label, Next Music Company. We've heard some of their artists on here. The amazing Taryn Hatfield was on here. I'll say it again. Taryn album just released this past Saturday. She reached out to me and told me, I don't remember what chart it was, but hit number 15 on a internet music chart. She had almost 2,000 people find her on her Twitch and watch the opening stream. Just amazing artist. So I welcome Mr. Jeff Baker of Next Music Company to belly up to the bar with us.
How's it going, man? Sean, thanks so much for having us.
Brother, I appreciate you coming on with us. For those of you that were following some of the posts earlier, we were supposed to have Sammy on. Sammy had another engagement come up, but listen to me. Sammy's album comes out February 19th. Am I remembering it right?
February 18th, Friday, February 18th.
Friday, February 18th. I'm going to tell you right now, and I hope she gets a chance to hear this. I posted it on another video. Her music hits you like a Stevie Nicks kind of a vibe, like that. Like you can feel that there's something in there. There's a message to be held there, but it's so more modern of a sound that it's got a very that Lord Billie Eilish whisper kind of in your ear. But I'm telling you folks, if you haven't heard Sammy yet, the album's going to be called Silver. Jeff's putting that out. That's going to be on Next Music Company. And if you're looking for their stuff, I'm going to let Jeff talk here in a little bit. Their website is nextmusiccompany.com. And if you go /artist, you can see all the artists they have. But they also have something we're going to talk about called Story and Sound, which I love. It reminded me of the old school VH1 storytellers kind of a vibe, which I think we've lost that in so much music. So make sure you do that. But let's do some house cleaning, and then we can get into this with Jeff real quick. First things first, as always, folks, we got the big board, sticker in a cause. If you're a music artist, reach out to me, and I'll tell you how to find Jeff, and maybe we can make billions upon billions of dollars together. But to start with, just send me a sticker. Send me a sticker. We'll put it up on the board. We'll read about it. We'll tell where people can find your music or your podcast or whatever it is you got going on. We'll talk about those kind of things. So sticker in a cause. You can find us on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and our Gmail is all the Above the Bar podcast. Twitter's the only one that's different. It's at Above the Bar 4, but LinkedIn is even the Above the Bar podcast. We're on everything. This is on everything, Jeff.
That's awesome.
We don't miss a beat around here.
Well, and you've got two. You'll have two stickers headed your way. You'll have a next records sticker that looks sort of like this. That'll be
It's
headed
going
your
up.
way, and then we'll send you a Terran, a Manic Pixie Dream Girl sticker too, because we have
Nice.
those coming your direction also. So
Oh, see, I just got chills, you know?
yeah,
I loved I like Taryn, she was just so much fun to have on. And she brought a
yeah,
great audience with her. And she brought a strong Twitch audience with her that I was like, there's a bunch of Twitch followers on here. This is pretty awesome.
yeah. Taryn was one of the first musicians to go to Twitch, and I remember the first time that she told me about it. And she said, so it's like this site mostly for like gamers. I was like, okay, well, so what do they do? And he was like, well, you go and you watch people play video games. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? She's like,
Amen.
yeah. She's like, yeah, you watch it. And I was like, and people do this. She's like, oh yeah, and then they like give them money. I was like, for what? Said, oh, maybe they'll pass a level or they'll get the sort of Anarantheus or something from the game you never heard of. And people are
Yes.
sitting. I was like, this is completely batshit crazy. And but she Taryn is so down to earth, so unassuming. She's kind of that, if I can say it, she's kind of that girl in high school that so many people wanted to talk to, wanted to hang out with, and never could. And so she goes on Twitch, and all of a sudden they're just like, it's the best hang ever. And she makes it, so easy for people, and it's really interactive, and it's just blown up for her. She the other night at during her album release stream, she had, I think, just under 70,000 unique viewers and averaged over like almost 1,200 watchers the entire night. I mean, that would be like selling out a huge theater in
Yeah.
town or something like that. And they just love her. And she did a really cool thing. She kind of went back and forth. She would play an acoustic version of the song from the record, and then she'd talk about the production, and we'd talk about different elements that we used in production, and then she'd play the album track, and it was super fun. So, and I know she had a blast coming on here and talking about music.
We had
And
s we had so much fun with her, and you're getting some of our folks, Anthony Vorzog's over watching us on YouTube right now on the Above the Bar podcast. So Anthony, has started labels. Anthony is very heavy in the death metal scene. Um,
nice.
so that's his bag. We talk about it. I love Anthony. There's so much we can talk. Anthony's just fun. Anthony's a blast. And then, uh, again, here's a music mom for you. Crazy Aunt Rose, who her son her son Clay is probably one of the wickedest drummers I've ever heard.
Very cool.
Just again, just amazing people. So you're gonna get some of my music background, folks. I think are gonna pop on today. So let's kind of get into this. So um oh, before I forget, hey, if your media is a little deftone and needs to be little uprising. I'm trying to think of any other bands that I can think of to kind of go in the musical scene here. Make sure you reach out to Media by Dibs. Media by Dibs. He'll go ahead and take care of you. If you mention belly up to the bar to Media by Dibs, he'll go ahead and give you a 10% discount and a free consultation on what your media needs. We've got a Benjamin Enright. Next Records has some amazing artists. Looking forward to see what they do in parentheses next.
I like
So
it.
I'm digging it, brother. You do. So let's kind of get into it. So what's your music background, Jeff?
So I grew up involved in music, in choirs and piano lessons, and I went to and then taught at music camps for kids and all that kind of stuff. And I had opportunities to go east to schools, Berkeley and other places like that out of high school as a jazz vocalist. And ultimately, I decided to stay closer to home and go to a small liberal arts college in Oregon called Willamette University, which had one of the best music programs really on the West Coast. I mean, the university itself was smaller than my high school, but the opportunity to work with Dr. Wallace Long Jr., who was one of my mentors there, and some of the other faculty
Now, who's
was
he?
something.
I don't know who that is. Who's Dr.
He was
Wallace?
the director of choral activities and my conducting mentor and a teaching mentor, and just a extraordinary musician who had been doing it at the highest level for over 4 decades. And so the opportunity to kind of go at the time when I was coming out of high school, I was interested in a lot of different things, and I went into college wanting to double major, and I was doing like political science and music, and then I did something called rhetoric studies and music. Rhetoric studies is like thing that you do instead of pre-law at a liberal arts college, kind of vibe. But ultimately, my focus really narrowed just on music. So I ended up studying only music and getting a degree that was, part and parcel to multiple things. So conducting and performance and education and composition, just all of those things. And after college, I decided, kind of had a relationship that had been going on through college. The relationship ended, and I was left not really knowing what to do. We had a plan together, as two people oftentimes build. And so I decided not to go to grad school because I was tired of school. And I started to look for opportunities to do my own record and to try to connect with a label. And I did. And it was the label that I've been on personally as an artist for, oh my gosh, I guess it's 20 years. It's 20 years since I've been on Origin Records out of Seattle, Washington. And Origin is a jazz label, and really was the first kind of indie label to do an artist co-op thing where you would bring them a finished product and then they handled the distribution side of it and the
Okay.
marketing side of things. And that relationship was one of the best of my life. And it's from that, being part of that community for 20 years meant anytime I was anywhere in the world, including, shows in South Africa or Europe or all over the United States, if I needed a band member, I needed a drummer, I needed a piano player, I needed a horn player, there was somebody on my label that I could call up and say, hey, we're label mates. You want to play a gig? If I was producing a festival or an event or something for students, I call people who are on my label. It's like, hey, come out, do this thing for a few days. And that community aspect was really invaluable to me. And some of my closest relationships professionally and musically came from being a part of Origin. So fast forward to 2019, and I'd been working with this phenomenal singer and songwriter named Sam True. And I had been her teacher for a while, her voice teacher, and that shifted into me serving as a producer for her on her first project. We went to LA, we recorded the project. It was really good. And I was sitting at home and I'm going, man, this needs something besides just going into the void of self-release, right? So I started to kind of research what opportunities might be available for Sam. And in doing that, I was at the San Jose Jazz Festival with John Bishop, who is one of the owners of Origin Records. And I said to him, would you ever consider giving me an imprint? An imprint is a sub-label of a larger label, right? So, the big label might be called Sony, and then under that, they have all these smaller labels that do different genres. And I said to John, would you ever be willing to give me an imprint on Origin for contemporary singer-songwriters, for indie pop, for indie rock, for emerging artists? And he thought about it for a while and eventually came back to me and said, I want you to have something that's completely yours. So we will do a distribution deal with you.
Oh,
So
wow.
I have the benefit of 40 years of distribution partnerships that they have through City Hall, which distributes worldwide, The Orchard, which does digital distribution and is owned by Sony. All of these different relationships that he had to, beat the streets for over decades, that we have the advantage of using as part of Next. And so that's what we did. And Sam's record came out at the very end of January 2020. And it was an incredible record. And she got a review in Downbeat Magazine for
Oh, wow.
her first album, which is extraordinary. And And then a tiny little thing happened called a global pandemic, which really,
Tell me
which
more about
really,
this global
yeah.
pandemic. I
I
haven't
don't,
heard
I don't
of
know if
this.
you've heard.
I
Things
haven't.
are,
Tell
yeah,
me
things are
more.
tough right now for, yeah, for a lot of people.
Must be a West Coast thing.
Yeah, so unfortunately for Sam's album, a lot of that stunted. I mean, radio stations went under. you know,
Yeah.
People that I was working with in promotion and all sorts of places, they quit their jobs. They weren't nowhere to be found, and the landscape began to shift dramatically for artists and things like that. So, fortunately for Sam, she is such a transcendent talent that opportunities are continuing to happen for her. She opened for Gladys Knight this last summer
What?
I know, at a music festival, and just brought the house down. And she's getting more and more opportunities to gig. And we're going to go into the studio hopefully sometime in the next several months and film her story and sound. And so that was the beginning. And then from there, I began to seek out artists that I was interested in working with and bringing onto the label. And a lot of them were people that I knew and had worked with or had met previously, and some of them, in the case of like Sammy, her piano teacher was one of my closest friends and collaborators, and he had been trying to get me to give her voice lessons for like a year and a half for free. And he kept telling me how talented she was, and he's like, "Look, you should work with her. You should work with her." And and I said, "Man, I really want to. I don't have the time or bandwidth to do anything for free at the moment." But eventually it came a point where she had enough repertoire that he made Justin, is his name, great piano player Justin Nielsen. He made this introduction, met Sammy, met her parents, and started to talk about what that might look like. And so some of those relationships formed from there. And now we're at 8 artists. We produced 4 records from May 5th through like October 5th, and then several more of the artists are going to do projects next year, and we're off and running with this whole thing.
So now, as a label is concerned, if I'm hearing it right, we're just over 2 years old.
Yep, yep. January 2020 was our first release. So
First
we
release.
literally just had our birthday on, what was it, like 12 days ago.
That's amazing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and to think, 12 days or 2 years, you're now got these artists, you've got people, starting to kind of their ears are perking up to who some of these folks are, and so I've heard the first two,
Mhm.
and I haven't heard. God, why did my brain just stop working?
Alex Baird.
Alex, that's the next one that's coming up.
Yep, March. Yep.
That's in March, which if I keep up with my repertoire here, we'll find Alex on here. We'll get him on. Uh,
It's a
but
her. She's from Seattle.
oh,
Yep.
so they're all out there.
They're all. Let me think about this. Yeah, they're all West Coast for the moment. So Idaho or Boise now, Seattle, Portland, Sacramento, are just now she lives just outside LA, is where the artists are located for now.
We got amazing music on the East Coast. You know that, right?
I do, and
I mean, come on.
honestly, like I'm excited. I haven't traveled east except to see my niece and nephew. Since the start of the pandemic, I used to come out for conferences and festivals in New York, and we would go to APAP and just a bunch of just different ways to see things, and then I would go and hit clubs and see people. But there are a number of artists that I'm interested in working with and bringing along and trying to establish relationships with if it's a fit, and they are located east of the Mississippi River.
Mississippi. Now, big Nate just popped on. Nate, I'm with you that our Maryland seafood is the best that's around. But I'm going to tell you, I've had some West Coast seafood. It's different. And I keep telling everyone I want to go up to Seattle to the Puget Sound and have gooey duck. I want gooey duck.
Well, and even better than that are razor clams. You ever had Alaskan razor clams?
I'm gonna say no only because I feel like I have, but I
Yeah.
couldn't I couldn't be like, "Yeah, absolutely."
So you can get razor clams are indigenous to Alaska. You can also get them on the off the coast of Washington State, and they're incredible. And then down further south on the Oregon coast are empire clams, which are smaller than.
See, I'm a Blue Point guy.
Well,
You ever
yeah. I
blue
mean, it's not.
blue
It's
you
not
ever
like
had
you can
Blue
go
Point?
wrong.
You ever had Blue Points?
I think I
And
have. I think I did when I was in Maine
yep, Blue
or
Point Blue Point
somewhere around
and
there. Yeah.
we have, like, Blue Point and, Little Necks. Nate,
Yeah.
I'm all about going out there. I got the RV. We'll get in the RV. I can work remotely out of my RV and staff companies that way, and we'll head out there. I have no
Yeah.
fear.
You can expense the whole thing, man. It'll be perfect.
That's the whole thing. Be like, it's for the podcast, but
Yeah.
I can do my other job, and my boss is fairly reasonable as long as shit's getting done. It's that's all that matters, and they all
Yeah.
know. I think all my people know that if it's not getting done, heaven help you, I will come back. Yeah, and Nate's over here, Maryland blue crabs. Now that's one for you.
Yes, I've had Maryland. I love Maryland blue crabs. And the
Awesome.
other thing that happened when we went to Maine was, lobster is this mythical thing the rest of the country. And in Maine, it's like chickens in North Carolina or something. I
Yes,
mean,
100%.
like I think it was $15, and I had three lobster tails, tempura, fried lobster tails, and like a basket of fries, like $15. And
Yeah, it was
you
like
know, um, it was incredible. I'm pretty sure I ate. We were there for like 10 days. I guarantee I ate lobster at least once a day, if not
I don't blame you.
twice a day in some form or another. So,
I
but
love
yeah,
lobster.
big fan of Maryland blue crabs. Soft shelled. Love the soft shell crabs,
So
and
that so
yeah,
that's a whole thing. I just actually had friends over, and this is not a food show, folks. We were going to talk music, but if you bring it up, I'm going to talk
I
about it.
mean, Sean, look at the two of us. I think food's
Yeah,
going to come up at some point.
it's 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 coming up at some point in this conversation. I must do many meals a day in my life.
Yeah,
And Nate's right there with you. Uh, Sean, can that be steamed like crab? Um, I never steamed a soft shell, but I've steamed lobsters like crabs before. I actually steam everything. There's like this whole. I have these conversations with folks about shrimp, and they're like, "Oh, I don't." First off, if you fry shrimp and hand them to me, I will hand them back to you. Like, please
that's
get
not the way to go, huh?
this is garbage. And if you hand me 4 shrimp and they're like, "Oh, it's with a side of shrimp," and you hand me 4 of them, I'm gonna go, "Where's the rest of it?" Shrimp is ordered by the pound to me
Yeah, totally.
and must be steamed with apple cider vinegar, 1 beer, Old Bay, and Vidalia onions.
Okay.
And when you do that, when you steam them with the Vidalia onions, what happens is I actually have gotten to the point where I almost like the onion as much as the shrimp, because what happens is those onions become almost translucent, but they're still crunchy
Hmm.
from all the steam, and then that sweetness gets down into the water and steams up through the shrimp with the,
Yeah.
apple cider vinegar. Bro, it's off the chain. And yes, Nate, I
Yeah.
you can steam a lobster like you steam a crab, absolutely the same way. I
Yeah.
actually don't like them. I don't like them boiled. I've had them boiled, they're good. We always so my wife and I, we vacation in the Cape. So it's the same
Hmm.
idea. You go to the Cape
Hmm.
and you're gonna get these things. So we'll move from food for a minute. So but you're in Boise. Like
Yes.
I now when I think of Ohio, I almost said Boise, Ohio. Folks, I'm not an imbecile. I promise you. Boise, Idaho, I think potatoes.
Hmm.
Is it like I've seen the giant potato wagon. I have seen,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? Like the trailer with the
Yeah.
big giant potato on it?
Yeah. Well, they drop a potato on New Year's Eve in downtown Boise, Idaho,
No shit.
instead of a. You should check it out. It's ridiculous. It's
But now out that way. So here in Albany, I just got to ask this question. So, and we have an amazing music scene out here.
yeah.
Would love to have you out here. If you've never heard of the Egg, playing at the Egg to me, as far as places to see an artist, there's nothing better than the Egg.
Cool.
Um, if you ever see the skyline of Albany, it looks like a spaceship out front
Hmm.
of the state empire, but it's actually the Egg, and inside of it they have I saw Ben Folds live at the Egg, which was one of the most amazing artists that like
Yeah,
you
he's
can't
a
even
very talented songwriter. Really,
it,
really talented songwriter.
but to see him in a venue that all the seats actually they're stadium seating, but they go almost straight up.
Okay.
So everything is like you're on top of it.
Yeah, like the Globe, like the old like the Shakespeare Theater,
Yes.
right? Like straight up in.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very
Uh,
cool.
so you got to get them out there to see that. So, but we have tiny hot dogs, not cocktail weenies, not
Okay.
pigs in a blanket.
Okay.
They're little tiny hot dogs in little tiny buns.
Did they get left in the dryer too long, or what's the
And
story?
right, like somebody shrunk the shit, but like that's like a big Albany thing. And
Okay.
it's very different than like most. Do you guys have that out there? Is there like something out there that's like different in that aspect? Like, this is they all know us for potatoes, but then there's this other thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people. I mean, so a couple things. Boise is a very different place than Idaho. So what you might find when you're in Boise is going to be a little different than what you might find if you travel north, south, east, or west about an hour and a half. Um, but I always tell people that Boise is like if Seattle, Salt Lake City, and Boulder, Colorado had a baby, uh, you would get you'd get Boise, Idaho. And so what I mean by that is that there's a lot of like the food scene is really cool here. A lot of just really high level stuff has been done here at restaurants like there's a great restaurant downtown called Kin, doing really cool stuff with food. There's a restaurant called Barbacoa, which is like way too hip for me, but
Ooh.
if I go at like 5:30, they'll let me in, and that food's really good. Richards is a great. There's just a bunch of really good chefs, and so the culinary arts thing is pretty happening. Um, Huge emphasis here on outdoor and kind of quality of life stuff, and biking and hiking and fishing and skiing is all of that's really really accessible. And then Boise is kind of constantly on top places to live in the United States. The quality of life is good. The cost of living is getting ridiculous, but traditionally has been pretty reasonable.
Well, everywhere's
So a
like
lot,
that.
yeah. So a lot of families, people want to start families here. So those three things kind of come together to make what really is a pretty unique and special part of the planet. I think. Um,
So how does that
I
affect I'm curious, how does that affect the music scene out there? Because a lot of your artists and I want to kind of tie this all together because I'm a firm believer that food and music go hand in hand.
Yeah,
Like, big time artists have crazy writers and it's always something for food
yeah,
because they want that. You can, we joke around about this and I bring food up only because we don't know each other than 28 minutes, maybe 10 minutes prior to that when we talked before the show,
sure,
but we can connect on food. People can connect on music.
yeah,
How
absolutely.
how how is that? And Benjamin, you're absolutely right. Taryn is a top 20 in the top 20, and is that new for next records? He's curious of. So we're going to get into that. But
Yeah.
that connection, how is that connection for you translated to music?
So when you go anywhere in the country or even the world, there are elements and aspects in place that help certain things flourish and grow, and other things don't, right? And so when you're talking about a scene, if you're building a scene someplace, if it doesn't matter if it's food or music or stand-up comedy or or theater or whatever, you have to have multiple elements going on at the same time to promote that stuff. Um, Boise has never been able to pull that off to become a real music scene because we've never had um, enough high level venues that are accessible to enough like a critical mass of high level artists, and then also an audience that's willing to come regularly and support it. So you've got some great venues here. You've got a handful of great venues here. You've got a really great festival that just sort of carpet bombs the city with music for 2 weeks straight, and it's for anyone who's a fan of live music, it's just a paradise. But sort of like um, sort of like when a city hosts the Olympics, if they don't put something in place for after the event
Right.
where it can positively impact the overall environment, there's very little chance for it to be successful. So what you have is you've got some really good artists. They might grow up here or they might come here for college or whatever. A lot of them end up having to go to Seattle. Like Taryn recently moved to Seattle, or they go to Portland, or they move to LA, or they find just a bigger pond where there's a few more of those opportunities. And that's unfortunate. It could happen here pretty quickly. There's a rich tradition of music education in Boise. Like kids get music from a very young age, going all the way through school. Everybody, huge music programs, really talented artists. But is that infrastructure in place, when it's time for them to go out into the marketplace and play and sell their music? It isn't yet. I hope it does at some point. That would be amazing. But for now, it's mostly about quality of life. It's mostly about the other things maybe that are going on in a person's life that has them here, and then they try to create what they want to create and go where they need to go to do that. So another example of that is, and again, like there are talented engineers in this recording engineers in Boise. There are really good players, all that kind of stuff, but there isn't a studio where we could pull off what we pulled off for Taryn's record or Sammy's record or Alex's record anywhere close to here.
You need those
We
bigger music cities.
we have to we had to for a multitude of reasons, but the main one was I knew that I could get a world-class engineer in a world-class room, hire world-class artists, and we could do it in a time frame that worked for what we're trying to do. Right? We don't have hundred
You're not
thousand dollar
flying them,
budget.
you're not flying them in. You're not like and
No, no,
and
not at
for a
all.
newer artist, and this is something I think you're touching on, and you tell me if I'm on the right page. We've all heard the stories of, you know, Black Sabbath, the very first album was made in a week.
Mhm.
Or if you reach out to some of these artists, what is it, Foo Fighters, they all went off to this house out in the country and they brought all their families and everyone just kind of hung out and they recorded in one of the back bedrooms. That's not a fucking reality.
No, no,
It's not.
it's not a reality, and it's the hardest. I think it's the hardest part for an independent artist or an unsigned artist or an emerging artist to really truly navigate, because you the options that are available to most everybody is, one, you can drop some money at Guitar Center or Sweetwater, right? I prefer Sweetwater if I
We
need
don't really
something
have
quick. And
those out here, but I know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
um, and uh, and you can get some decent equipment. You can get a decent mic. You can get a decent interface. You can do everything yourself. You can create decent, pretty good music. And if your songwriting is really good, and if you're a really good singer, it's going to be better than decent. But then you take it and you put it up on a massive site with no opportunity for a broader audience to ever interact with your music. The days of Usher wandering onto YouTube and finding Justin Bieber are gone.
Gone.
There's too much stuff.
Right.
There's too much stuff, right? So part of the business model, if you want to call it that, of Next was, so, if Goodwill were dollars, I'd be a billionaire. I have really great, I've got really great relationships with a lot of people who I've been fortunate enough to work with who, when I call them and say, this is what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to create a launch pad for these artists that are worthy of wider recognition, but this is what I've got to work with, right? And every single one of them, from the photographer to the engineer to the other producers to the musicians who played, they all were like, I'm in, let's do it. They're not making market value. They're a steal at 3 times what they were paid. But the point is that they wanted to be a part of it because they believed in what we were doing. They wanted to work with these artists. The music and the artist was compelling enough that they were interested in going, yeah, let's do this. So within those constraints, I work with each artist. We craft a crowd fund, and we go about setting the parameters of the project scope based on the crowd fund. And we've been fortunate because the artists have been really successful in crowdfunding. They've been able to engage their audiences on Twitch and their friends and family and people who've been clamoring for them to make records for years, to help them get this thing off the ground. So we were able to do things. I mean, I the thing I think I'm most proud of these records that are coming out is they sound about 3 times as expensive, at
Yes.
least, as
Yes.
what, as what I know we were what we spent on them. And that's because of my co-producer and engineer that I have been working with, Andrew Chang, amazing talent and a musician on his own, in his own regard. So he brings this completely different perspective to things, and the players who played on the stuff and their willingness to just be a part of it, and then the artist's ability to be flexible with their stuff, to come in with songs and then say, okay, let's see what happens now that when I give these over to me and Andrew and these other musicians, and what comes about, from that process. And it's been remarkable to kind of witness from day one to the end of it, um, and to the release. Most of these albums were essentially finished in about 6 weeks time. So
Wow.
we were there doing the proper tracking portion for roughly 3 weeks, and then maybe about a week or so of mixing and production all in, and then it takes a couple days to master it. And then you've got graphic designers, you've got photo shoots, you've got these other ancillary pieces to the
Sidebar.
puzzle. But that's essentially the schedule. And major label artists with huge production budgets, they're taking a year or more to make a record.
Right.
But it isn't realistic. And this model also forces our artists to be more clear and organized with their ideas, right? They need to come in with a pretty good sense of kind of where they want things to go, and then they let go. Whereas, when you've got $250,000 to work with to make a record, you can kind of just try a whole bunch of stuff in the studio. You can,
Right.
block out time and do what you want and see what
It
happens.
it looks like an episode of Dave on FX where, they're all in the studio and there's, with their entourages and everybody's in there and they can just hang out and do their own thing. I,
Yeah,
and it's just interesting. It almost has a vibe to me of when you see like Meryl Streep in an indie movie that there's no way they afforded to pay her what she is on the market, but is
yeah,
willing to step in and say, "Hey, this is a real quality person, quality artist, quality project that I can get behind and I can put my thumbprint on for the future." That's kind of the
yeah.
vibe I'm getting. Is that kind of how this all works together?
Yeah, a lot of musicians will tell you that there are 3 factors to any gig they decide to take, right? So there's the money, the music, and the hang. Okay, and most artists that I know and work with, if 2 of those 3 things are really good, they'll take the gig.
It's like Austin.
So
It's going to Austin. It, it's
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
it's the music and the hang because they're not going to
yeah,
make $1 million, but
yeah,
that's
exactly.
Austin.
Yeah. So I, part of what I do running this label is I try to seek out people who think that way, and I am really honest with them up front. I tell them point blank, it's like, look, the money's not going to be great, but the music and the hang is going to be awesome. Do you want to do it? And like I said, I mean, I think of everybody that I engaged to be part of these things, I think one person said no. And in my whole career of sort of doing things this way, I've only had one guy yell at me. I had one guy, go off on me about, that I was insulting him as a musician and all this kind of stuff. And he got done with his tirade, and I said, dude, there are worse things than someone calling and offering you, you know, $2,000 to play music. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't
right.
insult you. I know I knew when I called you that you're worth more than that, but I didn't insult. It's not an insult
Right.
to
Uh,
offer to pay you to do something if
I
you're really
I'm
good at doing,
so I can't stand that whole mentality of how dare you? Do you understand what my standards are? How dare I could educate a young person and provide them with this type of talent?
Yeah,
Never. Like, that drives me absolutely nuts. Like, I get it in what I do, my day to day, my corporate
yeah,
world. I get it.
yeah,
But when somebody comes to me and goes, Murph, I've got this guy. He needs hand with his resume. Give it to me. Let me look at it.
yeah,
Here you go. Now, if you want me to get like knee deep, knuckle deep into all this and really like get into it, well, that's a different animal. But if you just need my help, fuck it. Give it to me. I don't care. Like, that's what I
yeah,
do. That's
yeah. Well,
yeah.
everybody should know their worth and their value, and you should absolutely stand up for what that is. But if somebody comes to you with an opportunity, the answer is not no and a lecture. the you know the answer is not no and a middle finger. The answer is just, nah, I can't do it, but I really appreciate you calling, and that's it. And if I could teach any young professional anything, a lesson, it's that. It's like, it never hurts to ask. You should always understand the parameters under which you're operating, and um, but then beyond that, like, it's a very simple exchange. It's like, do you want to do this? Here's what
Yeah.
I can pay you. Here's what the opportunity is going to be, and then you say yes or no, and you move on with your life. So
Thanks. Appreciate you,
anyway,
man. Here you go.
yeah, yeah, totally,
If you ever want me to do music for $2,000, I promise you, you're not going to get your money's worth,
yeah,
but I will do it. I
yeah,
mean, if you want, I will. I sang to my son today. Nathan wants you to know he is a graphic designer also. So if you need to reach out to him, and he's an East Coast graphic designer, so that there'll be your East Coast. And Ben's had a
love it.
couple great questions. Ben, let me grab those real quick. Taryn is in the top 20 right now.
Yeah,
I can't remember what that site is. I wish he was on the to name it for me, but
yeah. So we work with a company out of Canada called PlayMPE. PlayMPE does radio promotion and sort of tracking for our artists and major labels all over the world. And I was fortunate enough to meet one of their VPs at a
nice.
conference. And again, if goodwill were dollars, I'd be a billionaire. So we spent several days together. We got a chance to hang out and had a really good time. And he, like everyone else, said, look, we want to work with Next and we love independent artists. And so they've put together radio promo packages for our artists
Oh,
that they can
nice.
afford to do, right? Which is just incredible. So what they do is they you go on and you sort of pick various lists that you want to service, and those are anywhere from the jazz lists are smaller, they're a couple hundred stations. Some of the like top 40 lists are several thousand stations. So with Terran's record, we promoted to kind of like a retro rock ish um, list, and it's I don't know exactly the name of it, but it's rock, but it's new stuff that has a little bit of a throwback vibe or feel to it. And but the first week that her record was out, it debuted on their airplay charts, and it was 15th in their
That's
top 20.
incredible.
It was I want to say 4 spots behind the Lumineers' new record and a spot or two ahead of Elvis Costello. And there was several really, really well-known artists on there. And then it's maintained into week 2. It was at 20. which, for an artist that no one has ever heard of, I mean, they're getting her one sheet and her album, and they click on the single. And for her to be doing that well with
That's
play
awesome.
airplay is awesome. It's great.
Well,
So
I'm
yeah, that was our first, and that was our first artist to chart anywhere. So which is really, really exciting. So,
so
and then
I have one
sorry,
request though. I got to let you know
yeah,
this. I have one request, and I
yeah,
tell this to everyone. When Taryn is on the red carpet
yeah,
and you're there also, I need to do one legit red carpet event. Like if I need to be her
I love it.
personal podcaster for a moment,
Yeah, do you
like
have a
I mean,
tux?
yeah, look, I did 20 years in the Marine Corps. I'll shave and wear my fucking blues if I got to.
Yeah, there we go.
They'll be like,
Well,
why is this man who's obviously not in the Marine Corps any longer with this jacket that like the top 4 buttons don't button and the neck of it is no way is that ever going to close again. Why is he
that's
following this
hilarious.
girl?
It's like, why does that girl have a military escort?
Right.
Is she a
Like
Biden?
okay.
Is she?
uh, that would be so great. And yeah, I mean, I honestly believe like she's legit. She is absolutely legit. But I felt that way. I definitely hope we can get Sammy to come back when she's feeling better. But I'm telling you right now, I think Sammy's legit. Like those are your first two that I've had an opportunity to speak to. And
Yeah,
the other young lady from June of last year, that was her name was Sam also.
Sam True. Yep.
Sam True. So
Yeah.
again, I haven't got a chance to talk to her, but I mean, so far, and now we've got Alex coming up, and I want to make sure because Ben's question was, is who's the artist that Next Records is producing next? Is that Alex?
Yeah. So we have so Alex's record is being mastered as we speak, actually,
Oh
and
wow.
we're just going over the finishing touches on that, and then we'll get into the album cover design and some of those, like I said, those ancillary pieces that are coming. But her record will be out whatever the third Friday in March is. That's our international release date. It's always the third Friday of the month. So that record will come out, and that's like really cool. There's some straight ahead jazz stuff. She's trained as a jazz musician, so there's some straight ahead jazz stuff as a singer, and then she also has these incredible original compositions that are kind of Nora Jones meets Carole King
Oh,
vibe.
oh.
Really, really, really cool music. And then the last part of her story that's fascinating and fun. Her grandmother was like a really well-known torch singer in the
Now
1960s.
what's a torch
In
singer?
torch singers are like they're like singers that would sing like old standards and
Oh, okay.
stuff like that. She sang at the World's Fair, and she has this whole catalog of these incredible songs from like the 50s and 60s. So we picked a couple of her grandmother's songs, completely rearranged them, and she's going to re-record her grandmother's music, which is just, it was such a cool experience for her to be able to connect with another generation, and partly where her talent comes from, right? So that's a really cool record. And it's interesting, all these artists are different. They're really, the genres are different and their approach is different, their life experience is different. The thing that they all have in common, obviously, super talents. And I don't mean that like, I mean, I'm just stating really accurate information. All of the artists that I am working with and that we've signed, they all have at least one thing that I go, that that is extraordinary. Like that thing is better than 99.9% of the people who are out working. They don't necessarily yet have all of it together because they haven't had the opportunity to put it
Right.
all together, but they've got a thing that I know we can build a concept and a record and a sound around. And I have a great romanticism for record labels of the 60s and 70s, like Atlantic and Motown and Capitol and Blue Note and all these places. And when you were signed to the labels at that time, they brought you into a room, and in that same room was everybody who was going to be a part of your music. All the producers, the engineers, your band, the radio promoter, Midge from accounting. Like they're all in the room together. They're all going, what we're going to find Ray Charles sound, and we're all going to be in the business of creating Ray Charles and making his music known worldwide. Then in the 80s, the money thing got out so far out of control that all those aspects broke up into smaller little areas and spaces, right? And all of a sudden you just have a very disjointed experience, and to the point where we are now, where A&R, artist and repertoire, doesn't happen. It doesn't happen most any labels, where they're really bringing an artist along and crafting their sound and helping them cultivate all of those things and giving them relationships, right, that they can use for their career. So that's what absolutely 150% what we're trying to do. And so, I hear these artists, or I know these artists, or they come and bring me an original song, or I see them gig, or I knew them, like Taryn I knew when she was in the 7th grade or something like
So
that.
you were so when she said that my old music teacher reached out to me and
Yep.
told me about this, that was you.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I was trying to put that together in my head. Like
Yeah.
she said, and she's from Idaho. I
Yeah.
wonder, I'm getting big
Yeah.
in Idaho. I just want you to know that.
I
You're
know. I
number
know.
3. You're number
You're
3.
you're blowing up.
You're
It's awesome.
you're my 3rd guest out of Idaho.
I love it.
That kid, the guy Albuquerque Withers, that from a
Uh-huh.
couple of weeks ago, he was from Idaho, but he's like a place that Taryn knew it. It's like 2 hours away from where you guys are, and it's like a resort community, some kind of
Sun
lake.
Valley or
No,
McCall.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not.
Okay.
It was
Yeah, cool.
so, and again, he was a music. So now the other thing that you're doing with all them that I think is great, and I kind of mentioned this, I used to love VH1 storytellers. I thought it
Yeah.
was one of the best things. I say it all the time. I have a handful of artists that I will, when people ask me, well, like, what's some of the best, most memorable concerts? Thompson Twins was a most memorable concert because it's the first time I ever saw an artist make a mistake on stage and thought, well, that's funny, and watch them lose their shit.
Yeah.
And that was I don't know her name, the female from the Thompson Twins. She was playing some kind of chimes from Hold Me Now, and she
I
hit
think
it.
I've ever seen that.
It was like this whole group of chimes she was playing. They all hung
Okay.
down, and she hit one
Okay.
of them, and that bitch came off, and she was madder than a bag of hornets. And I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I was like, "Ha, that's funny." And I knew she was mad, but that was one that made an impact on me. The greatest artist I've ever seen do a show is AC/DC when all the members were alive. I'm gonna tell you right now, short of the original singer who only did the first album, AC/DC live, Angus
Yeah,
is a
I can believe that's a good
fucking
show.
brother. To watch this 65, almost 70-year-old man on his back playing a guitar, getting lifted in the air, things going, it was incredible. Worst I've ever seen is Metallica. I don't give a shit what they say. It
Huh.
was that Saint Elmo's Fire album they did, whatever the hell it was called.
Okay. Yeah.
And every time they played a song from that, the entire crowd sat down and was like, "You guys done yet?" And then they would play
Wow.
like Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All, Shortest Straw, play something
Yeah.
like that, and the whole crowd was like, and
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
amazing. But the other one was Sting, and that's where I tie
Yep.
this into you. Sting does his show like a storyteller show. He plays
Yeah.
a song, he stops, he talks about it. Tell us about that, Pete. That's the story and sound. And folks, again, nextmusiccompany.com/story and sound, the whole one word, story and sound. You can go there and you can see these artists tell the story of their music, where it comes from.
Yeah.
What is that vibe for you?
So again, like harkening back to sort of the heyday of the music industry, right? You go and you buy a vinyl record and you open it up, and here are liner notes, right? A library of liner notes. And then you pick up Rolling Stone or Billboard or Downbeat, um, and here's this feature article. And so now what you have is you've got all of this context to understand and learn and really, really become just a true fan of this artist, because you know all of these things about them and the origins of their music. So fast forward to where we are today, where most people consume music via streaming, and there's little to no context. There are it's an album cover. It's maybe a kind of a cool little multimedia video piece of them, just quick sort of lights and sort of thing. And there's nothing there's nothing to give you a sense of who they are, or where all this comes from, or what it's really about. So there's that piece. The other piece is that, again, in the good old days, if you want to call it that, when an artist was getting ready to put new music out, they would hit the consumer 4 times. So they would release a single and they would charge you for the single, and you go out and you grab the single. And then they would release an EP, which is like just a couple songs, and you go out and you grab the EP. And so now you're giving them more money, and then an LP, right? And finally, maybe a full length album, right? And so that was kind of genius by a record company. It was a way to just, and it was also by the way, a really easy way for them to test how successful the album was going to be. Because if the single doesn't do well, the next piece, like, they can kind of judge. It's like, oh, we got to rethink this album, and they can kind of go back in and change. So again, we're at a point now where there's no monetary benefit to releasing singles whatsoever for an artist. There is also, because of the way that you have to pitch your music to Spotify or Amazon or whoever, they have such a short window of time where you're eligible to go on and submit a track for playlist consideration, editorial playlist consideration, to get followers, to build up the algorithmic stuff that they're using to determine spins. There's almost no benefit, if you're going to put a record out that you want people to buy, to releasing a single a month ahead of time. Same thing with radio, right? Like, if you pay all the money to promote a single to radio and it flops, you're done. You're cooked. Your budget's been spent, and now you can't grab another song and try again a month later. So what we decided to do was something that we felt like was more in line with the kinds of artists that we were working with, and the kind of vibe and narrative that we wanted to tell as a label. And so that's what Story and Sound is. They're episodic music series where you get biographical information about the artist, who they are as a person, the origins of their music, and then specifically the album that they're creating. And intermingled with that autobiographical stuff, those interviews and things like that, are live performances that we filmed in the studio, which is just really cool, because again, that's content that a lot of artists have to spend a lot of money to get, right? You have to get giant film crews, and you go to the top of the Empire State Building, and you film all this kind of stuff. And we were able to fold it into part of what we did when we were producing the album. So I'm really, really excited, and it's just so cool because you have an opportunity now as a listener to get to know these musicians like the way that I've gotten to know them working with them as a producer. You just start to see they're just such authentic people, and really deep. They're deep wells creatively, right? There's just a lot
so
going
awesome
on there, life experience and things like that. And they're very different. And that's the other cool thing is, like, you watch Taryn's episode and you learn about her album and Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and sort of her coming of age as a strong, independent, young female artist, and what that story was like, and the pitfalls and the rise and fall of all those things. And then you watch Sammy's episode and you learn about just I think one of the hardest years anybody has
oh God, yeah.
ever experienced, and the tragedy and all that stuff. But the ways that so many people in her community and family and friends surrounded the family of the young woman who was killed, and lifted them up and helped them heal, and how Sammy was able to process and heal through writing that music and going through those complex emotions. Her sister was in a coma, was in critical condition for several weeks. how she was able to heal through this process. And so that's another story. And what's this is what's incredible about humanity, right? Like, not every one of us has gone through, thank God, not every one of us has gone
Yeah,
through
no.
something like that, but every single person walking around on the planet has experienced loss. They've experienced heartbreak. They've experienced transition. They've experienced, um, losing a job, or the end of a marriage, or all of these. I call them common human emotions. Right? They're
Right.
these touch points, and so that's what's really cool about the music that the next artists are creating, is they have these unbelievable access points where you can come in and go, I know what that's like. Like, I remember going through something and it felt like that. And she's captured that, and she's captured it sonically, and she's captured it lyrically, and all that stuff. So that, to me, that's the common thread uh, of the next artists, and why story and sound is so important, because it's not just a really beautiful
Right.
photograph on a great album cover and really good sounding music. It's this other thing where you know something about them that you're not going to know otherwise.
You tap into an emotion when you so when you hear, we've all been in that point, and you hear a song and you're like, "Man, that I feel the emotion in that song." And then when you know what the emotion the artist was building for it, it taps into something completely different, where maybe
Absolutely.
I I'm trying to think of one in particular. There's always those songs out there where, people are like, "Oh, well, they were talking about this, or they were talking about that, and that's what they were talking about." I get, you know what? Here's a great one, and it's probably not the same with those young ladies, but it's the song "Closing Time." That's a perfect example of
Yeah.
not knowing what the artist was really talking about
Right.
until you find out. And folks, if you don't know what closing time is really about, has
Mhm.
nothing to do with an effing bar, nothing at
Yep.
all to do with a bar.
Yeah.
If you take your time and you find out, you're like, uh, oh, oh. Or Ben Folds is the exact opposite. His song "Brick," which he will not do in public anymore. Trust me, we tried to
Hmm.
get him to do it. He won't do "Brick" anymore. But
Interesting.
there's, yeah. Now that's one I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
Uh, and let me read Ben's thing. Ben says, "Yes, love Sam True, Taryn Hadfield, Sammy Silver, and what comes next. Such great artists at an amazing time." You're absolutely right, Benjamin. You were Benjamin. You're on this. You're ahead of the game on everybody else. Make
He
sure
is. He is plugged in. Yeah,
you
definitely.
are plugged in completely. And now I'm wondering if if Benjamin works there, but I mean, but he's plugged in. He's got all these folks. Just such a I lost track of what because of what he was talking about, but you've got such a I don't know if we're even allowed to use this term anymore. Stable of artists. Are we allowed to use that term anymore? I mean,
I
that's
don't think it's. I don't think it's derogatory. I don't know, but
I don't
luckily
know.
you said it and I didn't, so I don't have to be
I
accountable.
right. I guess, but that's what I always thought. It's one of those ones. I don't
Yeah.
know because you do
Roster, artist roster. We'll
roster
go with
roster
roster.
of
Yeah.
artists. I guess we used to always I always heard it in that term, but I don't know if that's if you can use that or not
I
anymore.
don't. I
So
don't think.
please,
I don't think horse racing is canceled, but I don't know.
well,
I just don't
it ain't
know.
canceled in Saratoga, New York. Trust me,
Yeah. Yeah.
that shit that shit is alive and well in Saratoga, New York. That shit
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
and they get their fair share of everything else. But I mean, you've just done such an amazing job with these artists and put together such a vibe with them. But that was the question I wanted to. How do you feel about not necessarily your artists because I don't they're not in this boat, but what's your feel for artists that won't do the song that put them on the map anymore? So you have some of these artists that are like, whatever the song happens to be, they're like, yeah, we won't do that song anymore. I'm not doing that song anymore. Bitch,
Yeah.
that's the only reason I listened to you was
Yeah.
that
It's
song.
well. So I have two stories. I heard Regina Spektor in concert a few years ago,
Okay.
and she played a beautiful concert, just her and piano. And she played a beautiful concert. She got to the end, standing ovation. She goes off stage, and the whole, probably the last 30 minutes of her show, after every tune, people are shouting, "Play Samson, play Samson." Okay, it's coming, and she's just ignoring him. She's not paying attention to anything. And so she comes out, she does an encore, she still doesn't play Samson, leaves the stage. Crowd's like, brings her back out. She sits down, okay? She's just about to start, and then it's pretty quiet, and someone says again, "Play Samson." And she turns and she goes, "I effing heard you." And then she plays it, and then she walks off, And so I was like, oh, okay. And to your point, we don't know what these songs are about. Okay.
Right.
We don't know what trauma people have experienced. We don't know what relationship it was. Like these songs are very, very personal to these artists, and they become a commodity to a listener.
Right.
And some of them aren't comfortable with it. And I think it's unfortunate. I will say that the flip side of that story is, have you ever seen James Taylor in concert?
He comes up to SPAC every year, but I've never seen him.
So another one of my really favorite.
I actually almost bought James Taylor and Carole King. So I bought a new album vinyl today, and I almost bought James Taylor and Carole King the vinyl.
Yeah. So this story is about Carole King. So James Taylor, also much like Sting, really good storyteller. He tells wonderful stories. The funny thing is, I've seen him 3 times. The stories are the same. So when it's like
a process,
right? And but it doesn't make them less wonderful. And so at one point in time, he starts kind of meandering on the guitar, and he's like, it was such and such. The year was such and such. I was sitting in a bar after a gig in New York, and my good friend Carole King came walking in after her performance and sat down. I bought her a drink and all this, and we were talking, and she said, "James, I wrote this song, and I've done it, but it just doesn't seem right to me. Would you be interested in doing it?" And then he pauses for a long time, and he keeps playing his guitar, and then he gets back on the mic and he goes, "I had no idea that night I'd play this song every fucking gig for the rest of my life." And then he, pardon my French, and then he plays "You've Got a Friend," right? And so there's somebody who has a healthy relationship with it and knows exactly.
He's accepted it.
Yeah, exactly what it is in the pantheon of music and in his career. And but and it's so funny when he's very dry. Obviously, James Taylor, he's very dry, and it's just it's a great moment in his show. So, I think that if they have mixed feelings about it when they release it, they shouldn't push it as a single. They shouldn't push it to radio. It should be a deep track, right? And it should be for the people who invest in their record. And if they don't, want to play it for whatever reason, that's their prerogative. I just think it's a bit of a missed opportunity, from time to time.
Because you're connected with because I always think of the song "Tainted Love," the big '80s hit, "Tainted Love." So there's a one-hit wonder band, and the lead singer of that one, he still tours, he still does stuff, but will not play "Tainted Love." I challenge anyone. First off, I don't even know who to remember his name.
Yeah.
I challenge anyone, if you remember his name, to name me another song that they did that makes you go to his show.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you right now, I go to that show and you don't play "Tainted Love." Me and the promoter, you owe me my whatever amount of money I'm about to pay for this show. Because that's the only I paid $20 to see you play one song. That's really all I came here for.
Yeah. There's another funny story. This was a number of years ago, but I went and saw. I went on a date. I took this girl to see a boy band, and they did a version of that song "Sukiyaki." "It's all because of you."
Oh yeah.
Right. So they had their boy band version of it. So in the course of a concert, this is the other side. They opened with it. They played it right after intermission, and they closed with it. They played it 3 times.
Just fucking fill that right on in there. We're getting our money's worth out of this fucking payment. We paid for this. We're gonna get our money's out of this.
There was no doubt. There was no doubt on anybody on that stage exactly what people had paid to come and come. Here.
It's all because of you.
Yeah, exactly. All for Naught. That was the name of that boy band. All for Naught. Yeah.
I've only ever So I've ran into like, so living up in upstate New York, I tell this to people all the time. You don't know who's around the corner.
Hmm.
Like, what's her name? 10,000 Maniacs. God, what the heck's her name? Lead singer of 10,000 Maniacs. She used to date the lead
Uh,
singer.
that's not Natalie Merchant, is it?
Yes,
No.
Natalie
Is
Merchant.
it? Is it?
I used to work for a very predominant passenger railroad company,
Okay.
and I've seen her sitting right in the middle of the train with around 1,000 other people. Well, not 1,000 because the train didn't run that much, but
Yeah.
300 other people. And I'm going like in my mind, I'm going, do you know who that is? Do you know who that is? Do you know who she used to date? She
Yeah.
dated the lead singer of REM. Y'all know that, right?
Yeah.
And I want to do that and I can't do it, but I'm like, and everybody's like, and I'm not coming back with the other people I work with, like, guess who's up there? She's up there. And they're like,
Yeah.
who? I'm like,
Isn't that like, I think that's like the perfect level of famous, right?
right.
Like, because she made her money, she established herself as a completely legitimate and viable creative
Absolutely.
artist, got a chance to do probably travel the world, but she can freely roam the streets
Mm-hmm.
of almost any
Yes.
town USA, and unless there's like a 10,000 maniacs sort of like like John Hughes has a neighborhood in Chicago. So I guess there might be 10,000 maniacs drive where she
Right.
can't hang out, but every place else
Yeah,
she's
she's fine.
good.
She's
Yeah,
good.
she's good. I
Yeah.
think that's like kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah, she's probably sitting in it. The other one that we used to, but you know what? There's a, I still have often said I could do a couple of shows with people I've worked with over at that job. I no longer work at it, but I have a lot of respect for the people I work with. But like I've had what? Let's see. Well, definitely had Jennifer Lawrence on work on my train and gone. She's she's as pretty as she is in person as she is on
Yeah,
TV,
yeah.
but who really and I've told my wife knows this, so I'm safe in that aspect. Um, do you ever watch NCIS? NCIS, the original
Uh,
NCIS?
no, I've never seen. No.
If you ever get a chance to watch the original, there was a woman on the show. She played a character named Ziva, who was supposed to be
Okay.
like Israeli police department that was working with the
Okay.
naval criminal. I had her on my train. Stunningly beautiful woman that was like, but then I've also had the butler from the TV show The Nanny, and I've had John Carroll Lynch. Um, Kathy, God, I can't think of her last name. She played the bar owner in Indiana Jones in the temple in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the one who owned the bar and was doing all the shots.
Yeah.
Karen Gillan, I think is her name.
Okay.
Bro, she is the nicest lady you're ever gonna meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
She is the nicest lady. I've had all kinds of folks, but so I mean, I love what you're doing. I know we just kind of went out. I make a lot of left turns in this show. I
That's
apologize.
okay.
It's what
That's
we do.
okay.
That's why it's like sitting at a bar with a jackass like me.
No, it's fun. It's very
So,
fun.
I mean, so I always like to ask musicians this. You get a shot to work with, well, actually I'll switch it up for you because
Okay.
I've done this. I did this question with a good buddy of mine, Rick, and we went and we asked 3 artists that if they could still be alive today, who are they? I'm gonna throw you under the bus for a minute. And if you just give me one, I'm perfectly acceptable with that. Who are they? Why and would they still be relevant? So like mine were Janis Joplin. God, I don't have a brain fart right now. Janis Joplin was one that I thought, I think she would end up being on like The Voice as like a coach or something
Yeah.
like that. Like she
Yeah.
would have still been relevant in that way.
Yeah.
Um, the other one was Kurt Cobain, who I think would have fallen off the face of the earth and just wouldn't have been relevant at all. It might have been with like Novoselic doing like different types of like activist type stuff because a lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize he was actually a big activist when he was alive.
Yeah.
What was another one? But and then not Al Green, but God, why is my brain not working right now? This is what happens to me. But do you have any artists that you say, hey, I think if this person was still around today, I think they would still be relevant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the first ones that comes to mind for me would be the great Donny Hathaway, because I just think that that voice is completely timeless and is the basis for like the modern vocals of so much soul, R&B, pop in that kind of category. It's just I just don't see that ever having losing any kind of momentum from a talent standpoint. I think Whitney Houston, you know, I think
Do you
if
think
she
she would
were,
still be relevant?
I do because it's just, I mean, think about, she's like the first name that they all list, like every pop, female pop vocalist, they all listen to
They
Whitney.
want to
They
be
all,
Whitney.
yeah. I mean, Adele, there would be no Adele if there hadn't been Whitney. You know what I mean? I just,
God, Amy.
those are two that come to mind kind of just off the top of my head. Um, yeah, it would have been interesting to see some of them. Um, I would have also been interested to see how Amy
That's
Winehouse's
what I was saying,
car-
Amy. As soon as you said
career.
Adele, I think if have you ever watched that documentary, folks? If you're still hanging with us, thank you so much because we're getting into nerd shit right now. A little bit of music nerd shit for a moment. I I tell people this all the time. I can't play an instrument if it meant my life, but I had amazing music influences. I had two Uncle Mikes.
Okay,
One's still with me. One has passed away. My uncle,
everybody needs an Uncle Mike.
they do. My uncle Mike, who passed away, owned every iteration of a Beatles album ever created, whether it was in vinyl, whether it was green vinyl, whether it was digital, whether it was a CD remastered, and went to Berkeley on a full ride as a musician.
Yeah,
So that'll tell you the level of talent. But he was also the guy who always thought he was going to hit it big and never did. Um, he actually, I was just telling this story to somebody the other day. I was probably 13 or 14 years old. And here's something as a kid, Jeff, you'll appreciate that you don't appreciate shit when it's happening till you're older.
mhm, yeah.
I watched a James Brown sound check at
Oh my
age
gosh.
13 or 14 years old at Pier 6 Pavilion in Baltimore, where I grew up, because my uncle and his band, Tom Wright and the Rainmakers, Tom is still with us, had won a Battle of the Bands contest to open for James Brown. There was a limousine with a hot tub in the back of it. I promise you that. I still
Yeah.
remember it. Uh, but I watched this sound check with James Brown, whole like everything going on
Mhm,
and going. And as a kid, I'm like, just play the music. I don't understand this.
mhm.
Looking back now, I'm like, like I would look at 13-year-old maybe like, asshole, do you understand what you're watching? Do you understand what you're seeing right
Yeah,
now? You don't
yeah,
get that understanding. So I had that uncle for that piece. And then my other uncle was very Led Zeppelin, Van Halen, very much that rock era. He's about 10, he's 10 years older. Or no, he's 8 years older than me. 8
yeah,
years older than me. So as I was coming up, he's 18, I'm 10 years old. He's got the stacked stereo system with the speakers bigger than my head, and he's like turning it up. It goes up to 11. And and I got this vibe out of the music. So I just I when I get into this whole music piece, but Amy, have you watched the documentary about her?
yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
How I gotta ask, man, like did your heart hurt like just watch like I as a parent I watched that and I'm going as a dad I just wanted to hug her and just be like it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my mind, like artists are divided into two categories. Historical artists are divided into two categories. So on the one hand, you have people that, in my opinion, represented like a seed change, like where literally music was going this direction and now it's going this
Kurt
direction,
Cobain.
right? So I actually don't have Kurt Cobain in that category. I have Kurt Cobain in a different category. I have Kurt Cobain in the time, place, perfect moment
Okay.
for what he was and what he did, right? And so it's like he's what I call a convergence artist, where these things, all these different factors in the world converged at the same time and place to make what he was doing not only like viable and visible, but actually like kind of blow up from there. And so, like, as I think back, and I don't think either one or the other is more significant than the past. I just think that, like, with Amy Winehouse, that was a seed. She was a seed change artist. Like she just took these elements from these different genres, and then coupled with her talent and her approach and her sound and all this
Gosh, you're
stuff,
so
and all of a sudden it's just like now we're going over here, and all these other artists were able to kind of piggyback on top of what was happening there. With Kurt Cobain with Nirvana, there were other bands at that same time that also benefited from similar environmental factors, some of which had a huge impact on music, like Pearl Jam, others of which were mostly time and place, like Stone Temple Pilots, right?
perfect.
So
Yeah.
they're like mostly captured in that place, not the same longevity. So, when I think about things that way, that's kind of like your question about would they still be relevant? Well, to me, the ones that represented a sea change, where then a whole bunch of other people were then going that way, I don't think those artists, Aretha was never out of
Right.
vogue because she was Aretha, right? Like she literally, it was like now, now a black woman can go on and sing this kind of music with this much just character
Power.
and personality and power and control, and it's cool and people love it, and all of a sudden that gives permission to all these other things to happen. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, it does make sense. It does
yeah.
make sense because like I love Adele. I even like Adele 30, which to me is kind of like, okay, I like Adele 30. But I think you put Adele and Amy next to each other, Amy wins every time.
Yeah, I think it's a different thing. I mean,
But I think
like
Adele
to,
wants to be Amy.
yeah, I like to imagine what it was like the first time that like a label or producers heard Adele sing.
Right.
I mean, I just imagine, one of them like turning to the other and go, "We're all going to be so rich."
Yeah, right.
Like
This shit we just won the lottery, gentlemen. What's that? You play that shit again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she was such a transcendent vocal talent, right? The problem there, in my opinion, I've never met her, I've never talked to her. My input is not.
It's just look, we're two assholes who know nobody that are just look. Relax, folks.
But I don't think she had people around her taking care of her to preserve that instrument. And I'm just talking from a physiological and this is the voice teacher side of me coming out. Like somebody needed to pull her aside.
I'm not crazy then. I'm not crazy when I hear a distinct difference.
No. She's had a lot of problems. Some of it was lifestyle choices. Some of it was just they weren't guarding the instrument early enough. She was singing too much. She was touring too much. She was ubiquitous, the first couple of years that she was out, and that's not sustainable. That's not a way to build a career. So, but on the flip side, like you've got someone like Amy Winehouse who is much more involved in the crafting of her sound, right? Of the artistry of the sound. Adele's is very, very clearly put together, almost surgically put together, right? Like they did it. I think it was 60 Minutes or 2020 did a story a couple of years ago about how they make Adele songs, right? And it's like the piano comes in here and it's played at this register and it's this kind of thing, and then the drums come in here, and like it is crafted to do exactly what it does, to leave most of us on a heap, crying on the floor, calling our exes on our cell phone.
I love you. I miss you.
That's exactly what it's supposed to do, right? Common human emotion. she's tapped into, she tapped into that stuff. She plugged right into it. But that's a different thing than Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse was a lot more interested in creating her
Yeah.
own universe musically.
I just feel like Amy was like Amy was. I get that vibe. Like every movie you've ever watched where the jazz singer is on stage and walks off, and after the song is played and walks right to the bar, and some barfly like, I'm gonna buy you a drink, and she takes the drink, and before she ever sips it, throws it in his face, and like he gets mad, and the bar bouncers carry him away. That's Amy to me. Like that's that
Yeah,
every vibe I get from her is that like gritty, leave me the fuck alone. I
yeah,
got this. That's Amy to me. Oh,
yeah.
so
Yeah, I think from a personality standpoint, and again, I've never met either one of them, but
right.
from a personality standpoint, I actually think Amy Winehouse was probably more like a young Alanis Morissette. Like I
Mm,
think that was probably more kind of her
yeah. No, that
deal.
makes sense.
You know what
But
I
the
mean?
dad in me
And
wanted to hug her after watching that documentary.
yeah, I mean, it's just such a tragic thing. But and then the other artist I would mention, just because I think she's the greatest singer who ever lived, was Eva Cassidy. I just, that's a musician that
Mama
never.
Cass?
No, no,
That
no, no,
oh,
no.
I don't know who Eva Cassidy is. Who's Eva
You
Cassidy?
would, her rendition of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" has been played, I don't know, 200 billion times or whatever. It's she was a singer, songwriter, guitarist. She played kind of blues and acoustic stuff and a couple of jazz songs and everything. And she died very young. She was in her early
Oh my
30s.
god, she's from Bowie, Maryland.
Yeah, and
Died in
they did.
96.
There's a really great documentary. I think it's called Songbird, about
It's funny
her.
you say that. It is called Songbird. It popped right up.
Yeah,
So I looked
yeah,
her name up real quick because I'm like, I don't know this name offhand. It says
yeah.
jazz, folk, and blues. Brother, you and I, because like I could make a hard left turn on you. I would love to get into. I keep saying I'm going to do this whole entire after show thing because you and I can get into. I can't stand country music. I would rather take a sharp stick in the ear than listen to country music. But I love bluegrass,
Okay,
and I think that those are two different things.
very
In
different. Yeah, very
in
different.
my mind, like there's an artist named Tyler Childers who I love. He is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and
Have you
his
ever checked out like Nickel Creek and some of that kind of acousticy?
I
You know,
I may have like I have an entire channel on my Pandora
yeah,
that's just all bluegrass. It's a Tyler Childers channel.
yeah,
Um, and we could so God see this is one of those things I love. Like music, put it this way, when you and I get done talking, I'll look over at my Google and I'll say, and I can't say it because she listens to
she's
everything.
listening to you.
She listens to everything.
Yeah,
And I'll
yeah,
and I'll mention playing Rolling Stones on Pandora because I got an entire thing of Rolling Stones. It always plays the band. It always plays Rolling Stones. It plays
yeah.
CCR. It plays all these artists that I think one of the things we've lost so much in music, my opinion, is harmonized male harmonies
Hmm.
in music or is one of those things that has kind of gone away. Uh, Ben, Eva Cassidy, amazing. Jeff Baker knows his stuff. He does. I love this because I'm not that. He's got an education in music. He's a music teacher, voice teacher. He's got the talent. Jeff, you're bringing these young artists up. I'm very impressed by it, and I don't get the vibe of, and I mean this with a lot of love. I don't get the scummy vibe. I don't get that Phil Spector kind of like crack the whip, make the music, we're going to be all rich. I don't get that vibe. I get the vibe from you of here's a guy who loves music, loves to see people succeed, loves to hear their sound and wants them to be successful. And we really thank you here at the bar for that kind of passion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Uh, I made a bunch of mistakes the first time I ever made a record. I had, I did a lot of things wrong, right? And life is about taking that stuff and learning from success and failure. And if you're smart and if you're thoughtful, you extract those things out, right? You reduce them down to their basic, like, optimized value. And then when you get into teaching or you have an opportunity to mentor, you take those things and you bring them out and you say, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but here is a cautionary tale, or here is something that really, really worked well for me, or whatever the case may be. And that's the whole point of me wanting to do this. I haven't played a gig myself of my music in like 3 years.
Oh wow.
So, but knowing that, mentoring was really important to me, and after I stopped teaching full time, wanting that still to be a part of my life, but wanting it to be in this area where I felt like I could impact young musicians a lot, in a lot more meaningful way. So the first conversation I have when I sit down with the artist that we sign is I say, look, riches and fame are not at the end of this process. Not for you, not for me. None of us are going to get rich from this. What we can do is we can build a life for you in music. We can give you a trajectory, right, that isn't flatlined, but that actually goes to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I would love in the next 5 years to be able to have the resources to continue to make additional records with the artists that I'm working with. In other words, it would be great if we sold so many records that we said, all right, let's do this again. Let's run it back. At the same time, if if Sony calls Taryn tomorrow and they're like, we heard Manic Pixie Dream Girl, it's incredible. Here's $500,000 and a $300,000 advance on your record, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be the first person to throw her that party and celebrate that, because that's the point, right?
Right.
Like the point is not for her or any of the artists to stay in one place that is their comfort zone and continue there forever. The point is for them to grow and be able to do more with their music if that's what they want to do. So the artists know that. They know that that's our goal. They are leveraging my relationships and my experience in the music industry to get a really truly world-class first product into the market, and a real clear, I think, this is a terrible term, but branding message about
No, it's
who
not a
they are
terrible term.
and who they want to be, right? Like that's even more important. Is it's like what do you want people to think when they hear your music? What do you want them to feel? That's what we should
It's
be,
not a terrible term. It's not a
directing
terrible
it to.
term. It's not. You said bandwidth earlier. That is a terrible term. Using that is a terrible term. I'm going to tell you that now. That is a terrible term.
What if I say emotional bandwidth? This is still bad.
God. Oh, it's even worse. God.
All right. You know
Just
what?
say you don't have the time. Just say you don't have the time. I don't have the.
You know what? You know what though? I'm gonna use two more. We'll circle back and dig down deeper on this later.
Oh, I don't have the bandwidth to circle back and dig down deeper on this, but it might. Oh God! Like I heard bandwidth for the first time the other day, and I was like, "This is horrible." And I said to the person, I was like, because I really honestly thought that they were talking about their internet. Honestly thought I was like, "What? Your internet's weak?" And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "You said you don't have the bandwidth." They were like,
sometimes when I'm really tired and my brain doesn't go to my SAT vocabulary words, I just tell people that they're giving me the pinwheel of death, right? Which if you've ever had a Mac, you know exactly what that. And that's the same thing. It's just like we have stopped and
we're done. It's all over. Well, look, brother, we're gonna get ready to close the bar up here. We've had I think you and I could probably keep going.
Yeah, man.
Afterwards, I'll have to grab the album that I purchased today. I think you'll be proud of me. I think you'll be happy with me.
Okay.
Jeff, I hope you're proud of me. But as always, so folks, look, nextmusiccompany.com, and it's all spelled just like it should be, nextmusiccompany.com. You can go on there. If you go /artist, you'll see all the artists God, I almost brain farted. I almost said sound and studio, and I know that's not right. Story and studio, story and sound. you can get it to it there, but you can absolutely get to the Rain site from nextmusiccompany.com. Make sure you're checking them out. You have all these amazing artists. I want everybody who hears this to do me a big favor. Go grab Sam True's album now, because Sam kind of got beat up with the pandemic, which isn't cool. So go grab Sam True's album, get onto that. Taryn Hadfield's album just released a week ago. That thing's amazing. Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Sammy Silver, we've got February 18th. Hers is going to drop. I'm telling you now, get a box of tissues, turn the lights down low, and
Yeah.
just be prepared for Sammy. And then what's Alex's last name?
Alex Baird.
Baird. And then we got
Yeah.
Alex Baird, who hopefully everything works out. We'll get Alex Baird to come on if we can do that.
Her record's called Lemon Tree.
Lemon Tree, and then that'll come on. I'll pour much more alcohol probably for that, because if it's a jazzy sound, that just, to me, jazzy sounds need to be like you're drinking and you're like just. I mean,
yeah, you might have to pull out like the top shelf. Might do a top shelf martini or something, I guess.
Yeah, I'm normally a bourbon guy. I just haven't picked up any. I'm still doing all right. I've got a bottle of George Dickel Sour Mash whiskey, so I'm still doing all right. But yeah, I might have to do that. Brother, well, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, man. If I can just say one more thing, and
please.
This is really on behalf of like all artists everywhere. People need to understand, and we can't say it enough, for a musician to make the same amount of money that they make from selling you one CD, they have to get 5,200 streams on Spotify. And
5,000?
5,200 streams on Spotify to generate the same revenue as they get from you purchasing their album. So the reason I bring that up is because, look, there are a dozen ways from Sunday to stream and listen to music, and whatever way is best for you, like in your car, at home, on your Amazon Alexa, whatever you want to do, that's great. Listen to it however you want. But if you're trying to support music and support creatives, you need to buy a physical product and stop thinking about it as, well, I don't listen to CDs. That's not the point. You can listen over here, but support those artists, because so much the microeconomy that goes into producing a record at any level is substantial, and it involves not just that musician, but it is engineers, producers, instrumentalists, photographers, graphic designers, all of these different pieces that touch points that are, that's what they're doing. They're living off of making these projects. And the way that we support those microeconomies is by buying physical products. So I tell people all the time, like every year I make a choice to find 2 kind of independent artists that I'm going to drop $50 a year on their content some way. I'm going to buy a shirt. I'm going to, go to their show. If they come to town, I'm going to buy the CD, something along those lines, because that is a path forward for them to be able to create a career and an impact for themselves in the music. And so that's my kind of parting words. It's just to say, listen how you want, but support the artists and support the music by buying physical product.
I love it. Hey, support your podcaster, because guess what? I don't make shit on this unless you go to TeePublic and you buy some of my shirts and you look up the Above the Bar podcast. You can get this sexy face shirt.
I love it.
If I can get
it's a baseball tee too, which is very flattering for some of us with alternate body types.
Dad bods. We like baseball tees. I'm all about it. And Jeff, you get a new tee. We'll talk about that after the show. But you know what? It's funny you say that. We were going to close it. I got to ask this. But is it better are you producing vinyls for any of these people?
We will be eventually.
I love vinyl.
Vinyl is impossible to get right now. I mean, the backlog from the production sites is 4 to 6 months. So you have to get in line and go from there. We will be doing, I'm pretty sure with Taryn's record and probably Alex's record, we will be doing limited edition colored vinyl, which will be really cool. It'll have their own, designs and stuff, and
let me know.
Signed and all that kind of good stuff. So, but but yeah, it's been, it's such a valuable asset for artists to have, because it is like the ultimate collector's piece. But yeah, given the production restraints right now with everything, it's been impossible to have that be part
You
of the
got the wheels
plan
turning.
in time for the release of their records.
You got my wheels turning. We're going to talk about something after the show.
Nice.
We're going to talk about something. I got an idea. I don't know if I think it's a good idea, but hell, what the hell do I know? Well, folks, look, as I keep saying, make sure you're going on the nextmusiccompany.com. It's the same thing on Facebook. It's the same thing on Instagram, Twitter.
It should be.
Same thing on Twitter.
Should be Next Music Co. or Next Music Company. Yeah.
So make sure, if you're in here and you're watching, you're one of our loyal listeners and you're doing all your downloads, make sure you take the time and you support these folks. If you're new to listening to us and you found us through Jeff, I ask that you make sure you take a moment, you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our stuff. Our LinkedIn, our Instagram, our YouTube, and our Facebook and our Twitch are all the Above the Bar podcast. Our Gmail is the Above the Bar podcast @gmail.com. The only one that I always say is different is our Twitter is @Above the Bar 4, number 4. I don't know. Twitter doesn't love me. I just think my name's too long for them.
Twitter doesn't love any of us.
Yeah, no, unless you're the guy who, that's a whole other thing. The NFT $4 million tweet bullshit, whatever. But make sure you're supporting all of us. If you're listening to us for the first time on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe. Eventually, I hope my YouTube, I get enough to where I can change my YouTube name. Like, that's a whole nother conversation. YouTube, like, I got to have like all kinds of alphabet at the end of my shit, but it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But as I always do, and this is important to me, as the guest, you get the last word. And don't log off after this is all over because we got to talk. All right. So you get the last word, Jeff. What is the last word?
The last word, man, is support independent artists, support independent podcasters. Make sure that you understand the impact that your resources have on the broader economy, because that's really, I mean, we all have one vote every couple years, and that's definitely important. But really, how we impact and make change and affect things that are important is our affiliations and the things that we choose to support with our time and our resources. So do that. Find independence that you believe in and support what they're doing.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in.
This has been an Earplug Podcast presentation, found on earplugpodcast.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found.